I'm Olivia Turner, 34 years old, and when I stepped into my cousin's wedding alone, I could feel every eye on me before I reached my seat. Aunt Margaret made a loud comment about career women growing old alone. Uncle Robert chuckled, without looking up from his drink and across the ballroom. My mother barely nodded from her circle of well-dressed guests. What none of them knew, not even Vanessa, in her designer gown, was that in 30 minutes Nathan Reed would walk in wearing a tailored tux and looking for me. And once that happened, they wouldn't be whispering, they'd be scrambling. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to walk into a room full of people who thought you didn't belong. I was born in a quiet suburb outside Seattle to two people who once loved each other enough to build a life from scratch. My father was a high school history teacher. My mother stayed home until I was 9, then took a job at a small interior design firm. Money was never abundant, but there was always food on the table and someone to help with school projects that changed when I was 12. My father's affair broke, the family like a plate dropped on concrete, and when the court asked me who I wanted to live with, I chose silence. Neither felt like home anymore. The judge sent me to my mother, and every weekend after that, I packed a bag and crossed between two lives. One hollowed out by bitterness, the other polished and unfamiliar. My mother remarried fast to Walter Stevens, a man 20 years older with season tickets to everything, and a house in Palo Alto that looked like a magazine spread. She changed her name to Stevens before the ink on the license was dry and changed mine in practice, though never on paper. I was always introduced as her daughter Olivia, but never our last name, never really hers. I slept in a guest room that looked like a model suite, clean, modern, and empty. The closet was stocked with dresses I never chose, and when Walter hosted his wine and charity dinners, I was told which one to wear and which topics to avoid. Do not mention your father, and don't argue about politics. Those were the rules. My father's life fell in the opposite direction. The woman he left us for didn't stay long, and the years that followed blurred into a string of bad rentals and worse decisions. By the time I hit college, I was covering his phone bill, and eventually his rent. He never asked directly. He'd just say he was between checks or that something went wrong again, and I'd wire money while walking to class. I never told my mother or anyone in the family they thought he worked for an insurance company and still had that little house with the garden. Truth was, I paid for his groceries while tutoring freshmen and running code on campus servers. Still, I made it, graduated from Caltech at the top of my class, took a job with a small startup in San Jose, and by 27 was leading development teams at one of the fastest-growing firms in the Bay. By 32, I bought my own condo overlooking the water with my name alone on the deed. The day I got the keys, my mother sent a forwarded invitation to Vanessa's baby shower with a handwritten note that read, "Are you bringing anyone or still coming alone?" I never brought anyone, not to Vanessa's bridal shower or Grandma's 80th, or Uncle Robert's retirement brunch in Napa. I arrived with gifts and smiles and updates about work. No one asked for. I brought cheesecake once, still warm from the oven, and watched it sit untouched while store-bought cookies disappeared in 5 minutes. None of it mattered. Vanessa had done everything right. She married a doctor by 26, had a baby by 28, and lived in a house her parents helped finance. She wore pastel dresses and pearls and always remembered to compliment Grandma's cooking before anyone else at dinner. I wore slacks and silk blouses and forgot to laugh at Uncle Robert's golf jokes. I didn't fit the mold. But what my family didn't know, what no one knew, was that 6 months before Vanessa's wedding, I met someone who saw me differently. I was at a conference in Austin standing in line for a drink when someone bumped my shoulder and apologized before I could turn around. I was picking my phone off the floor and looking up into the kindest eyes I'd seen in years. His name was Nathan, and at first I didn't recognize it. But that night turned into coffee, then dinner, then long walks along Embarcadero weekends in Mendocino, mornings that started with fresh coffee and code reviews, and evenings that ended in quiet laughter under low light. He asked me not to tell anyone, not yet, not until we were sure. And I didn't mind until the wedding invitation came, and I picked out a dress the color of pine needles and slid Grandma's jade earrings into place and realized I didn't want to hide anymore. I sent him a message just before leaving. Come if you're free. Come to the reception. What I didn't know was that by the end of that night, everyone who had ever doubted me would be looking at me differently, and not all for the right reasons. The reception hall was drenched in candlelight and blush-colored flowers. The air was thick with perfume and champagne, and I could already hear the whispering before I'd taken my seat. Table 23 sat hidden behind one of the tall centerpieces, a wall of pale pink roses stacked so high you could barely see the dance floor. From where we were placed, Aunt Linda looked up when I approached and tapped the seat beside her. "You finally made it," she said, then motioned toward my empty ring finger, still single. I see across the table 2 teenage cousins shifted awkwardly in their chairs, neither looking me in the eye. I sat down quietly, folded my napkin over my lap, and reached for the water glass. Vanessa's voice rang out somewhere near the head table. "Olivia," she called the tool from her gown, gliding behind her like smoke. "You look very work chic. That color's nice on you. Is it off the rack?" She didn't wait for an answer. Her attention had already flicked to someone else behind me, her face set in a permanent smile. She didn't notice the tightness in mine as she walked away. I caught a glimpse of my mother on the far side of the room, her arm linked through Walter's as she introduced him to a group of men in matching blazers. "This is my daughter Olivia," she said, when they passed close enough for me to hear. "She works in computers." I stepped closer. "Software architecture. Actually, I'm a director of engineering at Horizon Technologies." The woman she was speaking to blinked slowly. "My nephew's in community college for that. Maybe you two could connect?" My mother gave a brittle laugh. "Olivia hardly has time for family, let alone mentoring. But we're so proud of her independence." The music started low, strings swelling as the officiant took the microphone chairs. Shifted heels clicked across the marble as guests moved to the front row for the ceremony. I stayed seated while the others made their way up front. Vanessa had chosen a string arrangement of an old pop song for the aisle walk, and when the bridal party took their places, I saw Garrett standing at the altar, his eyes scanning the room, then quickly moving on. I watched the ceremony from a distance through the slats of the floral centerpiece, bits of petals falling onto the tablecloth. Quiet kind of detachment settled over me, like the softness of a coat in winter. The words, the readings, the promises, they all floated over me without weight. My phone buzzed as the officiant declared them husband and wife. It was Nathan running late. "Board meeting ran over. We'll be there by 7:30. Save me a dance." I was about to reply when Uncle Robert appeared beside me. "There's my high-flying niece," he boomed, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Heard you've got stock options now. Maybe you'll take care of your old uncle in retirement." He laughed at his own joke, then added, "You've got that nice little condo, right? Not bad for someone unmarried. Guess a woman doesn't need much space without a family." As he wandered off, I heard cousins at the next table betting on whether I'd bring a cat to the next family event or if I'd even be invited. "Did you see the look Vanessa gave her?" one of them asked. "She only got an invite because Aunt Lydia insisted I stood and walked to the bathroom quietly, trying not to draw attention." Inside, 2 bridesmaids were reapplying lipstick. "Can you believe Olivia showed up alone again?" one said. "My mom says she's married to her job because no man would deal with her. It's sad, really," the other replied. "All that education, and she doesn't get that. Men don't want competition." They froze when I stepped out from the stall. Neither spoke. I washed my hands, slowly met my own eyes in the mirror, and left back at the table. I checked the time. It was 7:15. Nathan would be here soon. I debated texting him not to come. This room, this family. They weren't worth the trouble. And then the room shifted. The whispers began quietly, then rolled across the space like a wave. Heels stopped tapping glasses, paused mid-toast. "Who is that?" someone whispered. "He's with Garrett's investor group." I think I turned and saw him. Nathan in a black tux, perfectly tailored shoulders, square face, calm eyes scanning for me. He walked with a pace that didn't seek attention, but couldn't avoid it either. Heads turned, chairs scraped back, phones came out. People tried to look without looking. He reached me and smiled. "Sorry I'm late," he said as he kissed my cheek. Boardroom. Politics never ends. "You're here now," I replied. I could feel the weight of every eye on our table. Aunt Linda straightened and patted her hair. "Olivia, Darling, aren't you going to introduce your guest? Nathan took her hand. Nathan Reed, pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about Olivia's family. Gasps started as soon as the name left his mouth. Nathan Reed, someone whispered. Quantum Shield. He shook hands, smiled politely, didn't let go of mine. The table transformed. Suddenly, everyone had questions or compliments or invitations. Fiancé Linda, squealed Olivia. You naughty thing, keeping secrets. She turned to the other tables. Everyone. Olivia is engaged from across the room. My mother stopped mid-sip. Her face froze, then flickered through shock, curiosity, and something else. Her sister Margaret leaned in, whispered something. Then the two of them moved in unison toward our table. Why didn't you tell us you were bringing someone so special? My mother asked with a tight smile. She extended her hand. Lydia Stevens, Olivia's. Mother, this is my sister-in-law Margaret. Nathan greeted them smoothly. Congratulations on your daughter's wedding. It's a beautiful evening. Thank you. Aunt Margaret beamed. Vanessa will be thrilled. Someone like you is here? She dropped her voice. I recognized you instantly. Your work in cybersecurity is groundbreaking. My husband's in finance. He'll be thrilled to connect as if on cue. Uncle Robert arrived, drink in hand. Nathan Reed. I've been following your company since the early days. We should talk banking and blockchain. I've got some thoughts. Nathan nodded. Perhaps another time. I'm here tonight for Olivia. His hand found mine under the table, gave it a gentle squeeze. My mother beamed. I always told Olivia to focus on her education, to reach for the stars. Nathan smiled. She certainly did. Her leadership at Horizon is well respected. You know her work? My mother asked. Of course. He said. We met at the Tech Summit in Austin. Her presentation was the highlight of the event. Uncle Robert chuckled. That's our... Olivia always the smart one. We knew she'd find someone. Eventually. Vanessa approached. Then eyes cool, smile fixed Olivia. You should have told us you were bringing such an important guest. We would have seated you at the family table. She turned to Nathan. I'm Vanessa, the bride. Olivia and I are practically sisters. Congratulations, Nathan said. It's a beautiful celebration. Thank you, she replied, then looked back at me. But you could have said something. An engagement deserves a proper announcement. We're private people, I answered. Some things matter more that way. Well, we simply must get a photo. Vanessa insisted Garrett would love to meet you. He's in venture capital, too. Nathan shook his head gently. Perhaps later. I haven't had a chance to catch up with my fiancé. The word cut through the room like a quiet bell. More whispers, more phones. Cousin Maya was already texting someone as Vanessa walked away. I watched my relatives scatter, then regroup, all of them recalibrating. I saw my mother whispering to the wedding photographer, Uncle Robert deep in conversation with Garrett's father, Aunt Margaret glued to her phone, likely looking up Nathan's net worth. Nathan leaned close. Is it everything you expected? Worse, I said. I'm sorry, don't be, he replied. It's educational. He looked around. Your father's, the only one who hasn't approached us. I scanned the room and saw him near the bar, standing alone, holding a glass. He raised it slightly when our eyes met, but made no move to approach. My mother returned. Just then, you two simply must take a few pictures for the family album. The photographer followed at her heels. We stood for the photos. I felt Nathan's hand on the small of my back and my mother behind us, adjusting angles. Perhaps Olivia could wear my diamond necklace for the picture. Her jade earrings are perfect. Nathan said, family heirlooms matter more than borrowed shine. Don't you think my mother fell quiet as the photographer worked? Nathan leaned in. Are you okay? I nodded slowly. Actually, for once I am. I didn't know it yet, but by the end of the night, that quiet feeling would fracture completely. The music swelled as dessert plates were cleared, but hardly anyone stayed seated long enough to finish a full course. Guests drifted from table to table, each new group angling closer to table 23. My third cousin Jamie stopped by with a wine glass and a sudden rush of childhood memories. Remember Lake Tahoe? He asked. We used to catch frogs down by the dock. He looked at Nathan. My son's thinking about engineering. Maybe Olivia could put in a word for him. Next came Aunt Vivian, who had once called me too, opinionated for marriage, now standing beside me with a soft smile. "I always said you were a late bloomer," she said. "The brightest ones take time to shine." Two younger cousins hovered near the table, waiting for a break in conversation. "Olivia," Emma called. "We've missed you at family dinners." I glanced up. We sat at the same table in February. Sophia stepped in quickly. "We were hoping you might help us with something." Emma had just finished her marketing degree. Sophia was still in school. Both were hoping to get into Horizon's internship program. "We know it's competitive," Emma added, "but you could probably recommend us, right? I mean your family." Before I could answer, Lisa appeared standing directly between us. "Olivia," she said with forced cheer, "it's been way too long. We've got to plan a cousins' weekend like old times." She turned to Nathan, extending her hand. "I'm Lisa Chen, Vanessa's sister." "Olivia and I were inseparable growing up," Nathan nodded politely. "Funny she's never mentioned you." Lisa's smile twitched before settling again. "That's our Olivia. So private, always has been. We'll fix that." She went on about a new boat her husband had bought, inviting us to join them for a weekend sail. "Just the cousins," she said, "and their significant others, of course." The air around our table had changed. Every word spoken now seemed to carry a second meaning behind it. Gestures of affection wrapped around quiet ambition, nods layered with calculations. No one asked where I'd met Nathan or what he was like. They asked about investments or internships or dinner plans at houses we hadn't been invited to in years. Walter circled back with two of his colleagues in tow. "Nathan, this is Paul. He's working on a development in Palo Alto. Just broke ground last month." My mother stood close behind him, introducing everyone as if they were old friends. Nathan shook hands, but his smile had started to fade just enough that I could tell. Between conversations, he leaned toward me. "Your cousin's husband's been watching you all night." I turned and caught Garrett's eyes just before he looked away. "That's new," I said. "He barely said hello at the engagement party." Moments later, Garrett made his way over Olivia. He said, "I don't think we've spoken yet. You look different tonight." "Married life suits you, Garrett," I replied. "Vanessa must be thrilled with the new house." "The house? Yes." He nodded, his eyes flicking to Nathan. "I've been following Quantum Shield's overseas expansion. Brilliant strategy. I've got some ideas you might want to hear about family connections in Singapore, real estate. Some interesting overlap." He spoke to Nathan as if I wasn't there. A full conversation about future markets, about partnership potential, about funding rounds. Nathan listened, nodded once, then let the conversation trail off without promising anything. When Garrett walked away, I looked up at Nathan. They usually ignore me unless they need a password reset. This version is new. Emma and Sophia hovered again, hesitant now. "Olivia, just think about it." "Okay," Emma said. "Family helps family, right?" I didn't answer across the ballroom. I saw Vanessa in a circle of bridesmaids, her eyes watching us carefully. When she caught mine, she turned away. Later that hour, Nathan and I stepped outside for air. The hallway curved past the ladies' lounge, and as we passed, I heard my mother's voice. "Did you see the way he looks at her, completely smitten? Finally, she's bringing something to the table." I paused just outside the door. Aunt Margaret's voice followed. I nearly dropped my glass when he walked in. Olivia, keeping him to herself. Typical Lisa chimed in. "I still don't understand what he sees in her. She's not even the pretty one." They all laughed gently, muffled by the door. My mother's voice again. "Nathan Reed. Billions with a B. We need to make sure we stay close. Dinner next week." "Walter can talk investments." Aunt Margaret said something about a family lake house and inviting him to stay. Lisa joked about teaching her daughters to land a billionaire too. I didn't step inside. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, back against the wall, each sentence carving itself into my chest by the time their voices faded and the door clicked shut. I still hadn't moved when the hallway cleared. I stepped inside the lounge and locked the stall door behind me. My hands were shaking. My jaw clenched tight. They hadn't changed, not one bit. All the kindness from earlier, the compliments, the invitations, it had been a performance. I stood at the mirror, smoothed my dress, fixed my lipstick, and returned to the ballroom. Nathan spotted me instantly. He stepped away from a conversation with Uncle Robert and met me halfway. "You okay?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "But I will be. We need to talk." He led me toward the terrace doors where the music softened and the air felt easier to breathe. I overheard them. I said, "My mom, my Aunt Lisa, all of them talking about you. What you're worth, how they plan to use this." He didn't look surprised. "Your uncle pitched me an idea," scribbled on a napkin. "He said your cousin's husband had a slide deck on his phone. Your mom's husband wants to name a building after me. I've seen it before." I told him what I'd heard in the lounge, their voices, their plans, their jokes. They said I finally made myself useful. He listened quietly, his hand around mine. "You know what? No one asked me," he said. "They didn't ask what I see in you. Not one person." I didn't answer. He kept his voice low. "We can leave if you want. No announcement, no drama. Just walk out and let them wonder." I hesitated, my eyes back on the ballroom, the family who raised me, the ones who never quite saw me. "If we leave now," I said, "they'll turn this into something else. Vanessa will say I upstaged her. They'll say I was ashamed of you." Nathan waited. "So what do you want to do?" I looked at him then, past him through the glass where the guests gathered around the cake table, their smiles wide, their movements sharp. "Let's take the microphone before they do." He nodded. "Once. We'll do it together." What I didn't know then was how quickly this night would turn from performance to reckoning. The ballroom lights dimmed as the DJ called attention to the towering cake. At the center of the room, guests drifted toward it, wine glasses in hand, waiting for the bride and groom to make the first slice. Garrett posed behind Vanessa for photos, his smile just wide enough to satisfy the cameras. I felt. Nathan squeezed my hand. "You sure?" he asked quietly. I nodded once, then followed him toward the gathering crowd. My mother spotted us from across the room, her expression unreadable, but she didn't move to stop us. The cake cutting began a short toast, a few laughs, frosting smeared playfully. Then Uncle Robert stepped forward and took the microphone with the ease of someone used to speaking over others. "Before we continue this beautiful evening," he said, "our family has one more joyful announcement to share." Vanessa's face shifted fast, irritation flickering under her bridal glow, but before Robert could go on, Nathan stepped beside him and gently reached for the mic. "If you don't mind, Robert," he said, "I think Olivia and I should speak for ourselves." Robert hesitated just long enough to show surprise, then smiled broadly and stepped back. "Of course, the man of the hour." Nathan turned to face the room first. He said, "Congratulations to Vanessa and Garrett on their wedding. It's a lovely celebration and we're honored to be here." He paused, just long enough to let the room settle. "Yes, Olivia and I are engaged. We've been together for 6 months now." The reaction was immediate. Chairs turned, heads tilted, and a ripple of whispers moved from table to table. My mother leaned forward, as if she'd missed a detail. My Aunt Margaret froze mid-sip her glass, hovering near her lips. Nathan continued, "What many of you don't know is how we met, or how deeply I came to respect Olivia, long before we began dating. We crossed paths at a tech summit in Austin. She was presenting on adaptive systems and cybersecurity, and I was immediately drawn not just to her intelligence but her clarity." He glanced at me, then back to the room. "Her work is visionary. Her team at Horizon speaks of her with genuine admiration. And yet tonight I've heard very little about her accomplishments. Instead, I've heard a lot about mine." He let that hang for a moment. "So let me be clear. What drew me to Olivia wasn't status, it was character. She supports people without expecting recognition. She gives more than she takes, and she does it quietly without asking for attention." He handed me the microphone. My hand was steady as I took it. "Thank you for your sudden interest in my personal life." I said, "It's been enlightening." I looked out at a sea of familiar faces, most of them still trying to catch up to the tone shift. Some of you may be wondering why I didn't say anything sooner, why I kept our engagement private. The answer is simple. I've spent years working to build something stable in my life, and I've learned that not everything needs to be offered up for approval. A hush fell over the room. I scanned the crowd and found my grandmother near the back, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes locked on me. I also learned that approval in this family is often conditional-based, not on who you are, but what you can provide tonight. That truth has become hard to ignore. I handed the mic back to Nathan. He didn't pause since we're sharing truths. He said, "There's one more thing worth clearing up." He glanced toward Aunt Margaret and Uncle Robert. 6 months ago, Olivia mentioned her cousin was struggling to secure this venue due to a last-minute cancellation. She said it had always been Vanessa's dream to marry here, but the cost had gone up unexpectedly. There was a shift in the room as guests began glancing at one another. At Olivia's request, I reached out to a few contacts at the Ritz to see what could be done. I paid the difference between the previous booking and this one, anonymously, through a third-party donor. Gasps rose quickly. Even Vanessa looked caught off guard. Olivia asked for no credit. She simply wanted her cousin to have the celebration she dreamed of, despite their differences. My mother took a step forward, her voice quieter now. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. "We could have thanked you properly." I took the mic again, because it wasn't about being thanked. It was about doing something kind without turning it into currency. My father stepped forward from the edge of the room, the only one who hadn't approached earlier. He didn't ask for the mic, but his voice was clear. "There's something else they don't know," he said. And I think it's time he looked at Uncle Robert, then back at the crowd 3 years ago, when Robert's firm was about to go under. He came to me in confidence, said he needed help fast, not from the banks, not on paper, just someone he could trust. He looked at me. I told him to call my daughter. Uncle Robert's color drained James. "That's not," she liquidated stock options, my father said quietly, privately. Without interest or repayment terms, she saved his business without ever asking for recognition. And to this day, that loan has never been repaid. A heavy silence followed. My father looked at me. I'm not innocent either. I took money when I shouldn't have leaned too hard, expected too much, but I never tried to rewrite the past or claim her accomplishments as mine. I nodded slowly, then looked back at the room. Some of you only started seeing me when Nathan walked in tonight, and some of you still don't see me at all. I turned toward Vanessa. Yes, I paid for the venue. Yes, I did it quietly. And yes, I meant it as a gift. But if that's going to be turned into a reason for more expectations or more assumptions, then I'll be clear. That was the last favor done in silence. Nathan stood beside me, calm and steady, and for the record, I do not invest in family businesses. Not hers, not mine, not anyone's. No matter how friendly the pitch or how long the connection goes. Back the room was still. For a long moment, then someone began clapping half-heartedly, followed by scattered applause, but the mood had shifted sharply. Guests returned slowly to their seats. Conversation muted, hands tighter around their drinks. A few older relatives glanced down at their plates, unsure where to look, as Nathan and I stepped down from the platform. My mother moved toward me again, her voice softer. "We just want what's best for you, Olivia. That's all we've ever wanted." I didn't answer. What happened next would test whether any of these relationships could survive honesty, or if the truth had simply broken the illusion they'd worked so hard to protect. As guests slowly returned to their tables, the energy in the room had shifted. Small clusters formed near the back. Awkward conversations started and faded just as quickly. No one quite knew how to proceed. Not after what had been said, the band resumed playing something soft and polite, but it couldn't smooth over the tension. Vanessa and Garrett sat stiffly at the head table, their plates untouched. Aunt Margaret whispered something to Uncle Robert, who didn't respond. My mother approached just as Nathan excused himself to take a call. She stopped a few feet away as if still deciding whether to speak. "Olivia," she said, "what you said earlier, it wasn't completely fair. I've always wanted the best for you." I looked at her. She hadn't changed out of her heels, her lipstick still perfect, but her hands were wringing a cocktail napkin. "You wanted what you thought was best," I said. "That's not the same thing." Her eyes darted around the room, then back to me. "I'm still your mother. Doesn't that count for something?" I nodded slowly. "Being a mother is a role biology gave you. Being a parent is a choice you make over time." Her expression faltered. "I don't know how to be different," she said quietly. "This is how my mother was with me, how her mother was with her." I sighed. "That's why I'm not cutting you off. But there need to be boundaries, real ones, and they start with this. My relationship with Nathan is not a family opportunity." She nodded slowly. Whether she understood or not, I couldn't tell. "Will we be invited to the wedding?" she asked. "That depends." I said, "On whether you're interested in knowing me. The person, not just the image. She walked away without another word across the room. Vanessa sat alone, her plate untouched. I hesitated for a moment, then crossed the ballroom. "Congratulations again," I said. "It was a beautiful ceremony." She looked up, her makeup slightly smudged. "Did you really pay for the venue?" I nodded. Nathan helped. But yes, it was my idea. "After everything she asked, after how we treated you." I shrugged. "I remembered when we were kids, you used to talk about chandeliers and staircases and how you wanted something just like this. When the chance came, I figured, why not?" She didn't speak for a long time, then said quietly, "I've been awful to you. Jealous. Mostly," my mom said. "Your kind of life wasn't what mattered, so I clung to the one that did. We both played roles. I said you were the good daughter. I was the one who didn't follow the plan. We didn't write those roles, but we stayed in them anyway." She nodded slowly. "I don't expect us to be friends, but maybe we can stop pretending to be enemies." "That's a good start," I said as I walked back toward our table. I passed Uncle Robert. He tried to offer a smile. "These things are complicated, Olivia, but we've always supported you in our own way." I didn't stop. "Nathan's team will be in touch next week about your books. Standard audit protocol before any investment decisions." His smile dropped completely at our table. Aunt Margaret kept her eyes down, pretending not to see me, but I caught her whispering to her daughters. "Keep the connection warm," she said. "You never know what else might come from this." The night wore on. Cousins tried awkward apologies or light conversation, as if nothing had happened. I responded politely but didn't linger. As Nathan and I prepared to leave, my father approached from the corner of the room. He'd stayed back the entire night, never tried to speak for me or redirect attention. "That took courage," he said, nodding toward where the toast had happened. "Standing up like that." I glanced at Nathan beside me. I had backup. My father extended his hand. "Thank you," he said to Nathan, "for standing by her when I couldn't or didn't." Nathan shook his hand firmly. She never needed much, just someone who saw her. My father looked down, then back at me. "I always saw you. I just didn't know how to show it." He stepped aside as we walked toward the exit, the air outside cooler than I expected. Nathan took my hand as we crossed the lot, the car waiting at the curb, headlights casting soft shadows over the pavement. What neither of us said out loud was how much had shifted that night and how none of it would be undone. What came next would test everything we'd claimed about honesty and distance, and what kind of future we were willing to build. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors of my condo, the kind of bright, quiet morning that should have felt peaceful, but my head was still spinning from the night before. Nathan was in the kitchen pouring coffee into our favorite mugs, the ones we kept in my place with mismatched handles and small chips from too many moves. He handed me one without a word, and we sat across from each other at the table. "Do you regret it?" he asked after a while, speaking up like that. I shook my head. "No, I just didn't expect the quiet afterward, like everyone went back to their lives and I'm still sitting in it." He nodded slowly. "That's what truth does. It clears the room." My phone buzzed with a new message from Vanessa. She'd sent a photo of her and Garrett cutting the cake. No caption, no follow-up, just the image. I set it down without replying. Later that day, we took a walk along the Embarcadero, fog rolling in over the water, just enough to cool the air. Nathan stopped to tie his shoe and glanced up at me. "You good?" I hesitated. "I think so. It's just strange. I spent so long hoping they'd see me now. They do, and I'm not sure it matters anymore." "It matters," he said. "But now it's about what you do with it back at work." Monday morning, everything returned to routine. My team was prepping for a product demo. The board wanted updates on our expansion strategy, and by lunch I had 5 meetings behind me and 3 still ahead. But by Tuesday, the emails started coming in, not to my work account, but my personal one. Aunt Margaret wanted to clarify some misunderstandings and wondered if I might stop by for coffee. Uncle Robert had forwarded a revised business proposal, no strings attached. Just feedback. Lisa sent a long note reminiscing about our childhood bond and casually mentioned her husband's crypto startup. I didn't respond to any of them on Thursday. My mother called twice. No voicemail. The third time she left a message. "I think we should talk, you and Nathan. Maybe come for dinner. Walter's making roast beef." I deleted it without playing the rest. Nathan didn't press, but he noticed every time my phone lit up, every time I turned it over on. The table screened down the next Saturday. He surprised me with a drive north, no itinerary, just the coast, and a packed lunch. We stopped near a trailhead overlooking the water. The wind carried the scent of pine and sea. "I needed a break from emails," he said with a smile. "And you look like you did too." We sat on a bench near the edge of the overlook, our jackets zipped to the neck, the air clean, in a way San Francisco rarely allowed. "Can I ask you something?" he said. I nodded. "If this were anyone else, if you weren't related to them, would you give them another chance?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the waves roll in slow and steady against the cliffs below. "Probably not," I said finally. "But they're not just anyone." He nodded again. "Just know you don't have to fix what they broke that night after we got home." I opened a letter waiting in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name and my mother's handwriting. Inside was a photo. An old one, me at 7 years old, sitting on the steps outside our first house, holding a small blue lunchbox. My father beside me, arm resting behind my back. There was a note paper clipped to the bottom. "You always looked determined, even then. Maybe too much like me. Mom." I didn't know what to do with it, so I left it on the counter on Sunday. Nathan made breakfast eggs and toast with a side of silence, then said gently, "They'll keep coming. Not just messages, favors, pitches, but invitations, dinners, explanations. They'll dress it up, but it'll be the same." "I know," I said, "and I'll have to decide when to answer and when to close the door. He corrected. "We'll decide what?" I didn't realize then was that the next message wouldn't be a request or an apology, but a warning. And once it arrived, there'd be no going back. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as I was stepping into a budget meeting. The subject line was blank, the sender unknown, but the attachment was a scan of a document bearing my name and my mother's signature. It was a notarized agreement from 6 months earlier, dated just 3 days after Vanessa's original venue fell through. It outlined the terms of a private family arrangement in which I would reimburse the full balance for the Ritz-Carlton booking and relinquish any public acknowledgement or legal claim to the payment. Beneath it was a brief line written in my mother's handwriting, "For the good of the family. Thank you in advance for your discretion." I stared at the screen, unable to move for a moment. Nathan noticed immediately. When I returned to my office, he didn't ask questions, just sat beside me as I opened the second attachment. This one included correspondence between Uncle Robert and a legal advisor, outlining how my contribution to the venue might be reframed as a family investment opportunity. They're preparing something. I said probably to position it as their generosity. Nathan leaned forward. "You still want to give them a chance?" I didn't answer. The following morning I called my father, asked if we could meet privately. We chose a diner on the edge of Pacifica, a place we used to go after court. Mandated handoffs when I was 13. He was already there when I arrived. Coffee in hand. Old windbreaker zipped to the collar. "You look tired," he said gently. I slid the printouts across the table. He scanned them quietly, didn't flinch, didn't speak for a while, then finally said, "She's already submitted the form to the county records office. They're planning to host a thank you dinner." "Your name isn't on the invite list." I nodded. "How did you know?" "Lisa sent it to me by mistake. Thought I was still on the HOA committee." He paused. "They're trying to control the story before the wedding photos get circulated in society pages." "I don't care about the pages," I said. "I care about the lie." He folded the paper, slowly set it aside. "So what do you want to do?" "What I should have done a long time ago," I said back home. I called Nathan, told him I needed a few hours alone. I sat at the kitchen table with an open notebook and no distractions. Just pen and paper and a list of truths. I started with names, the people who helped when they had nothing to gain, the ones who stood quietly without pushing. Then I wrote the names of those who only called when there was something to leverage. It was a longer list than I'd expected. On Friday, I called my lawyer, asked her to review my financial transactions from the past year and cross-check anything that had gone to my mother's household or to Robert's business. She called back the same evening. "You're going to want to see this." She said there's more than just the venue. She came to our place the next morning with a stack of printed statements in a slim red folder over $15,000, had been withdrawn from a joint account I'd opened years ago to help cover my father's medical expenses. It hadn't been touched in months, until 6 weeks before the wedding. The withdrawals were made using an old checkbook linked to my name. Nathan read every page twice, then looked at me. "You didn't authorize any of this?" I shook my head. I didn't even know the account was still active. The signature didn't match mine, but it was close enough. Someone had traced it from an old birthday card. My lawyer looked between us. "We can file a fraud report, but once we do, it's public and likely permanent, family. Or not, this won't be a quiet process." Nathan waited until she left before speaking. "This isn't about the money anymore, I know," I said. "But it's time someone said enough." That night I wrote a short message and sent it to each person involved, every aunt, every cousin, every in-law. I am aware of the unauthorized withdrawals and the submitted documents. If this isn't resolved by Monday, legal action begins. No exceptions. There were no responses that evening. On Sunday, a single envelope arrived, slipped under our door. Inside was a check for the full venue amount. No note, no signature. Just the check and a business card from Robert's office. Nathan picked it up, read the name on the card, then set it aside. "You're not going to cash that, right?" "No," I said. "I'm going to file it with the bank fraud division." Just like the rest. Monday morning came quiet and clear. The phone didn't ring. No emails arrived. No one tried to stop what they knew was coming by noon. I had submitted the formal complaint with 3 agencies and passed all supporting documents to my legal team. What I didn't expect was the voicemail that came at the end of the day. "Olivia, it's Grandma. I know you've heard a lot this month, but I need you to hear this from me, not them. I didn't know what was going on until this morning. If you have time to stop by, please do." Her voice trembled a little at the end. I stared at the screen for a long time before pressing delete. What came next would require more than boundaries. It would require a reckoning that left no space for silence. When the formal complaint was filed and the last envelope delivered, I sat on the edge of my bed watching dusk spill across the window pane. For the first time in months, the silence felt different, less like emptiness, more like peace. Nathan found me there, set a gentle hand on my shoulder, and didn't ask if I was all right. He didn't have to. A week passed before I heard from anyone in the family. A letter arrived from Vanessa, written in careful script. She didn't apologize, not exactly, but she thanked me for what I'd done, both for the wedding and for finally saying aloud what so many had tiptoed around for years. She wrote that she was learning slowly to measure her worth outside the boundaries set by tradition and approval. I slipped the letter into the drawer with the others, not sure if I'd reply, but grateful for the change in tone. My mother called once early on a Sunday morning. I listened to her message voice, tight but honest. She said she hoped one day I'd understand she was doing her best with what she'd been given, and that maybe if I was willing, we could try again this time with fewer expectations and more listening. I let the message sit for a while before saving it. Sometimes you need distance before you can find forgiveness. The following month, I took a walk with my father along the marina. We talked about ordinary things, whether baseball, an old car he wanted to fix up. When he said, "I'm proud of you," I believed him, not because he had to say it, but because he meant it. That was enough. As spring rolled into summer, life didn't snap back to how it had been. Some relatives kept their distance. Others, like Lisa and Aunt Margaret, tried now and then to reach out, but on new terms. I didn't rush any answer. Boundaries had grown roots not from anger, but from self-respect. Nathan and I spent weekends together in quiet ways, morning walks, coffee by the window, planning our own future without the weight of someone else's dreams. We talked sometimes about the family, sometimes about nothing at all, and I found the quiet to be its own kind of healing. What I learned, and what I hope you hear in this story, is that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a simple act of naming the harm and refusing to play a part in it anymore. Dignity comes from knowing your own worth, even when others fail to see it. Kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing you can choose, especially when it's paired with a steady, loving boundary. If you're listening and these words echo in your own life, I hope you find the courage to stand up to speak and to carve out a place that is truly yours. And if you feel moved to share your story or just want a place where you're heard, you're welcome here because every story of quiet strength deserves a listener.